A young man has died mysteriously on the street. Will his grieving father end his life in pain, or use all his strength to find the killer for revenge? This man's name is Nels Coxman. He is a man who works at dawn, plowing snow in a small Nordic town to clear the roads. His house is on a snow-covered mountainside, where he has a happy family of 3. Thanks to his dedication to snowplowing, he was even awarded the town's Citizen of the Year. But such an honest and simple man is about to face a terrible event. His son, Kyle, works as a baggage handler at the airport. That night, as he was preparing to leave the break room, a man with a gun suddenly appeared. Kyle was dragged into a van by a group of masked thugs. Tied up in the van with him was his colleague, Dante. The van sped away. Kyle didn't know why he was taken. This gang dealt drugs. Taking advantage of the others' distraction, Dante opened the door and jumped out. The van stopped immediately. A white-haired man got out of the van and fired wildly at the fleeing Dante. Because it was dark, the man couldn't see clearly, and Dante eventually escaped. The next morning, the van drove into the city center. The thugs placed the unconscious Kyle on a bench. To avoid suspicion, they pretended to sit next to him chatting, then left him and walked away. In truth, the poor young man was already dead. Coxman and his wife went to the morgue and saw their son's body. The old couple was frozen in extreme pain, unable to speak a word. But the words of the police chief next to them struck them like lightning.
He died of a heroin overdose.
Coxman felt something was wrong, because he knew his son never used drugs. His son's death created a rift in their marriage. His wife blamed Coxman for not understanding their son. She vented all her pain and resentment on him. Coxman said nothing. He didn't want to explain or argue. He could only endure it all silently. A middle-aged man, now suffering the pain of burying his own child. At midnight, he returned to the plow shed for things he wouldn't do at home. He downed a glass of strong liquor, then pulled out a rifle. He wanted to end this tragic and hopeless life with a single shot. But just then, there was a noise from the corner.
Dante?
I'm sorry, Nels.
Coxman immediately recognized the bloodied man as Dante, his son's colleague. Dante kept apologizing to Coxman. Finally, he revealed the real reason for Kyle's death. It turns out Dante had stolen a large bag of drugs from the cartel. When the thugs came for him, they mistook Kyle for his accomplice and took him too. Unexpectedly, Dante was the one who survived. Coxman angrily grabbed the bastard, forcing him to say who killed his son. After getting the name and address of a thug, the fire inside Coxman ignited. He drove off immediately. He went to a busy bar. With the bouncer's help, he finally saw Speedo, the bastard who gave his son the poison. Seeing Speedo leave, he followed him. He followed Speedo into an elevator. No matter how Coxman questioned him, Speedo refused to answer. He didn't want trouble with this old man, so he pulled the pistol from his belt. He thought he had scared the old man, but he couldn't imagine the rage of a father who lost his son. After a brutal fight, Coxman dragged Speedo to his car. He went through the man's phone. Under duress, he got the name of Speedo's boss. When he couldn't get any more useful information, Coxman decided to send him on his way. He was originally a gentleman, but some things can turn a gentle sheep into a bloodthirsty wolf. But how to handle the body? In the north, he didn't need to worry about that. The population is sparse, and there are mountains and rivers everywhere. Coxman wrapped the body in steel mesh and threw it down a large waterfall. He returned home and found his wife sitting there alone, silent. No matter what Coxman said, she ignored him. After their son's death, their already fragile relationship had nearly vanished. After midnight, Coxman went to the plow shed as usual. That night, he sawed off the barrel and stock of his Winchester Model 70 rifle, turning it into a short-range weapon he could hide. Then he went to the bridal shop belonging to Speedo's boss. The owner saw the old man enter and knew he wasn't there for good reasons. Bridal shops usually only get women or young men, and this old man was hiding something in his coat. The owner told Coxman to wait while he finished with a female customer. The owner occasionally watched Coxman's movements. Finally, the customer left. Only the 2 men remained in the shop. Coxman hit him hard with the gun, making the owner spit blood. Under violent threat, Coxman learned the name of the drug transporter. They all belonged to a large drug cartel. The owner begged Coxman not to kill him. Coxman hesitated for a moment, then decided to leave. But he suddenly asked the owner,
Greatest quarterback ever. Elway Manning.
Elway?
And the body was handled the same old way. The cold waterfall received a little more nutrition. Coxman went to the airport. He waited for the drug runner, who looked like Santa Claus. He followed the man's car with his snowplow. The speed increased, full of menace. The runner saw the truck about to hit him, but strangely, the plow turned at a corner and disappeared. The runner didn't understand, but he sighed in relief. But he hadn't gone far before the snowplow suddenly appeared at the end of the road. Coxman got out and walked to the front of the runner's car. He wanted the man to back up, otherwise his plow couldn't get through. But the runner looked at the road. It was clearly wide enough. The runner realized Coxman was picking a fight. He took out a bill and offered it, wanting to resolve this quietly. After all, he had an important shipment in his car. Of course, Coxman punched the drug runner in the nose. He himself was panting from exhaustion, but he kept punching the runner in the face. He needed to know who was behind all this. But this runner's mouth was much tighter than the previous 2 dead men. He refused to say anything and even mocked him loudly. Just when he thought the old man couldn't do anything, Coxman pulled out the short rifle. He searched the car and found a container full of white powder. He ripped all the bags and poured the white powder onto the snow, where it blended in. So, sometimes in the north, don't easily put snow in your mouth, because you don't know what might be mixed in it. Then, he drove the snowplow and rammed the remaining jeep. And this body was also handled the old way. Coxman had already thrown 3 bodies into the river. So, sometimes the river water in the north looks clear, but you still can't drink it directly. Coxman returned home. The situation there was even worse. His wife had left, taking all the clothes from the closet. She also left a letter on the bed for him. But when Coxman opened it, it was a blank piece of paper. This blank paper showed their marriage had long been emptied by daily habits. Only disappointment and an indescribable distance remained. Coxman drove to a luxury villa. It turned out his brother, Brock, lived there. He used to be a gangster. So Coxman came to ask who might be behind his son's murder. While Brock went inside to make a call, the Thai woman in the living room kept filing her nails. But Coxman felt like she was cursing him, though he had no proof. Brock finally returned. He had results. It turns out the drug lord who killed Kyle is a man nicknamed Viking. He controls the biggest drug cartel in the city. Coxman wanted revenge, but Brock thought he couldn't do it. Viking has many men. A normal old man like him couldn't get close. He advised Coxman to hire a professional hitman and just wait at home for the news. Besides, Coxman had already killed 3 of the enemy's men. They must be furious by now. Brock was not wrong. At that moment, Viking was in a rage. 3 of his men vanished, a kilo of drugs was gone, and he still didn't know who did it. Viking, an erratic thinker, assumed that whoever took out his 3 men was no ordinary person. He suddenly thought of the Native American clan, his rivals in the drug trade. The more he thought, the more he believed they did it. He sent 2 of his men to take down an enemy's man and seize the drugs. His 2 men lay in wait at the airport parking lot. When a Native American man got off the plane and into his car, they followed. They brought this man before Viking. Without a word, Viking pulled out his gun and shot the man dead. He also ordered the body tied to a sign on the snowy mountain. He had no idea this act had truly angered a group of people. The elders of the Native American tribe stood with their people on the opposite slope. It turned out the man Viking killed was not a common thug, but the chief's only son. From then on, the 2 gangs were at war, a blood feud. Coxman had no idea he had accidentally started a war between 2 gangs. With his brother's help, he found a hitman in the city. The 2 met in a taxi to discuss the job. They went to a rundown motel. Coxman agreed to pay the hitman $90,000. As usual, he had to pay half the deposit up front. But unexpectedly, the hitman pulled a pistol, pressed it to his chin, and demanded 2/3 of the deposit. With no choice, Coxman had to pull out more cash for the hitman. The hitman gave his word, but as soon as he left, he went straight to Viking's house. He immediately said someone had hired him for $90,000 to kill Viking. Furthermore, this person was not sent by the Native American tribe. Seeing Viking's interest, the hitman made him an offer, pay him $90,000 to buy the name of his client. Viking laughed at the greed of this double-dealing hitman. This was the first time he'd seen someone dare to name a price in front of him. But as a kingpin, Viking didn't care about this small amount. He had his men pay the hitman on the spot.
So, who wants me dead?
Guy's name is Coxman. Coxman?
Viking immediately thought of the fat Brock Coxman, who was also once in the underworld. But he had no dealings with this man and no relationship. He didn't understand why the fat man wanted him dead. The hitman, having earned his money, stood up to leave. But Viking suddenly called him back.
Right, so, who taught you your ethics? You made a deal to kill me for 90 grand and you didn't honor that deal?
It's because I'm honoring this one.
You see, out here, character counts. Without character, there can be no business, and without business, well...
Hearing this, the hitman knew he couldn't escape. Greed had just killed him. Meanwhile, Coxman was still waiting impatiently at home. He checked the news online for Viking. The result: the man was still alive and well, partying and living it up. Coxman didn't know he'd not only been scammed, but he'd also gotten his brother killed. In his villa, Brock saw a car stop at the gate. When he saw Viking in the car, he knew his time had come. He looked one last time at the Thai woman standing by the window with loving eyes. This seemingly cunning man took all the blame for the 3 dead men. He blamed it on an old family feud, never mentioning his brother's name. He wanted to leave one person behind to get revenge. The enemy wasn't killed, but another of his own family members had died. Coxman and the Thai woman stood at Brock's grave. While he was grieving, the Thai woman beside him suddenly spat hard on the grave. Then she muttered a curse, grabbed her suitcase, and left. She had to waste time finding another man. This so-called foreign love was just a trick to trade her body for benefits. Coxman stood before the grave for a long time. It seemed some things he just had to do himself. He secretly found Viking's house, observing the situation from afar. It was then he discovered Viking had a young son in elementary school. Perhaps this boy was a breakthrough. Elsewhere, Viking learned he had killed the wrong person from the native tribe. To avoid a bloody war, he decided to make peace. He thought he had only killed a low-level thug, so he shot one of his own men, whom he had long tolerated. He sent men to bring this body to the native tribe as a peace offering. While he arranged this, he didn't notice the grim expression on his bald bodyguard. It turned out the handsome henchman Viking just killed was a close friend of the bald bodyguard. The two had planned to work 2 more years, then retire and travel somewhere. It seemed this lifelong dream had vanished into thin air. Viking's henchman brought a large gift box to the native tribe's territory. He pulled out a human head and placed it before the old chief. The henchman relayed Viking's message, saying he'd killed the culprit and wanted peace. The old chief signaled the henchman closer, as if to whisper something.
But I need a son for a son.
The old chief shot Viking's messenger dead. This war was unavoidable. Elsewhere, Coxman found the school of Viking's son. When school let out, he found the boy and pretended to be one of his father's men. The boy saw the old man in a suit didn't look bad, so he followed Coxman to the car. Coxman took the boy to his house. By now, the boy knew this man wasn't one of his father's. But he wasn't scared. Instead, he was curious. Because this man didn't make him feel unsafe or uncomfortable. He was even a little friendly. At bedtime, Coxman gave the boy his son's room. He was about to leave, but the boy wanted him to stay and read a bedtime story. Having not told stories to a child in decades, Coxman had no choice but to grab the snowplow manual and read. But surprisingly, the boy listened intently to the dry, technical content. Coxman read to the boy for a long time. When he stood up to turn off the light, the boy suddenly leaned into his arms. Coxman's heart suddenly felt conflicted. His son was dead, but his enemy's son was in his arms. He didn't see the son of his enemy, but an innocent child, just like his own. Meanwhile, Joe Viking was searching everywhere for his son. He found the school guard, who said the snowplow worker, Coxman, had taken his son. At this moment, Viking realized there was another Coxman. This man was the one who actually wanted him dead. The school guard demanded $10,000 for this important information. Joe Viking agreed to this deal. And so his fate ended up like that of the assassin earlier. Viking immediately led a large team up the snowy mountain. They found Coxman's house, but when they stormed in, it was empty. However, Viking found his son's backpack inside. The bald bodyguard found a photo in a drawer. On the snowplow was the name of the plow shed, and its address was on the nearby mountaintop. So, Viking led his army out again. But he didn't know that behind his back, the bald bodyguard made a secret phone call. He told the Native Americans where Viking was heading. He wanted revenge for his lover. And Coxman was indeed waiting on the mountaintop. He used his sniper scope to see Viking's convoy approaching. He knew a big fight was about to begin. So, he quickly took the boy into the workshop, hiding him in a steel locker on the 2nd floor. He hid himself in a secret tunnel beneath the snowplow, waiting for the enemy. Soon, Viking's convoy arrived at the gate of the plow shed. Hiding under the plow, Coxman aimed his rifle at the enemy, who killed his son. Just as he was about to take revenge, a gun was suddenly pressed to his temple. It turned out Viking's men had circled to the back door and found him. Coxman was brought before Joe Viking. At last, the two enemies, who had never met, finally faced each other. Joe Viking rushed forward and punched Coxman hard. While he was interrogating the old man about his son's location, he didn't know that behind him, on the snowy road, another convoy was approaching. The men in those cars had their guns aimed at him. The two major gangs officially opened fire. Coxman saw the chaos and quickly hid behind a vehicle. The battle in front of the shed was extremely fierce. The old chief sat in his car, motionless. It was not his time to act. When he saw that both sides were almost wiped out, the old chief finally opened his car door. He fired repeatedly at Joe Viking, wanting to kill the bastard himself. Meanwhile, Coxman ran back into the warehouse. He drove his snowplow out, ramming straight into Joe Viking's SUV. Seeing Viking dodge the hit and run toward his Cadillac, Coxman couldn't let him escape that easily. He climbed onto another track tree cutter. Here, the one thing he didn't lack was heavy machinery. He used the tree cutter to drop a large tree trunk, blocking the path of the fleeing Viking. The trunk smashed through the Cadillac, but even so, with a strong will to live, Joe Viking still tried to drive away. But when he looked ahead, he suddenly froze. A bullet had pierced his chest. The man standing before him was the old chief. He had finally killed the enemy with his own hands. Coxman also walked up to the car. He looked at the dead Joe Viking. And so, the two old men had finally avenged their sons. His wish fulfilled, Coxman got back in his snowplow. It was getting dark. He wanted to plow one last time. On the windy, snowy road, a man suddenly climbed into his cab. It was none other than the old chief. The two of them had no direct quarrel. The old chief put his rifle down. Just like that, the two sat in the snowplow, clearing the path for the convoy behind them. On the mountain, the snow and wind continued to fall. The town returned to its usual quiet. But human greed and violence never truly disappear. They just wait for an opening to rage again. Just like the snowstorm will never stop, the snowplow will have to work forever.
And that's a wrap for today's movie. If you enjoyed this movie, drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.